Hey everyone, it's Rob Stanley with the Seller Growth Podcast. And yeah, do you like the intro music there, Jeff?
I was still
It's
dancing to
all
the music.
right. Yeah, we got some new stuff going here since I think last time I got to talk to you. So I do have Jeff Cohen today from Seller Labs talking today about habits of every successful Amazon entrepreneur. And boy, I'm sure there is a lot of bad ones and a lot of good ones, Jeff, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
yeah, yeah, no, Jeff and I were actually talking beforehand, and man, we probably could just talk for hours. But we definitely want to get some information out to everybody regarding some great habits that Jeff has talked about. Actually, had him on a summit. It was a big hit, so I wanted to get him on the podcast just in case anybody missed it, to be able to go over some of these great habits for entrepreneurs. And some of them are in my head; they're kind of like duh, and then there's other ones I was like, oh man, I should have thought of that. So why don't we kick this off and let's go straight to the first one. What do you do to start your day with success, Jeff? Take it away.
Yeah, I think it's a great place to start. And, when it comes down to it, I think we need to start and take one slight step back before we can talk about starting your day with success and talk about what are habits and how are they formed. And habits are a routine, right? They start with a cue, something that sets you off to a particular thing, which then leads to some type of action, which then leads to some kind of reward. And these are things that are happening. These habits are happening to you in your daily basis, your Amazon basis, and your life basis all the time, whether you realize it or not. And once you start to become more attuned to your own personal habits, you can start to work to change your habits to make them healthier habits for you. And I got a great example because this happened to me recently. My family was taking a trip over spring break. We were heading to the airport. We got to the airport. As soon as we passed through security, my daughter looks at me and says, "Can I get a bagel from the Great American Bagel Factory?" And I said, "No, you know what? Your mom packed lunches, so we don't have to eat in the airport and we can be a little safer. So let's just go." Further down, my kids are like, "Can we go in and buy candy from the candy shop?" The bell rings for them to start boarding the plane. My wife says, "I have to go to the bathroom." All of these things are habits that my family has based on cues of walking into the airport, getting onto a plane, starting the boarding process. They're not things I really think of habits, right? Because we might think of a habit as going to the gym on a regular basis or something like that. But all of the actions we take are signaled by a cue. Something is telling us. Our phone rings, it tells us to look at it. Our alarm clock rings in the morning, it tells us to wake up. And then we have different routines that we have based off of the cues in our life. And so your routine might be to wake up and exercise. Somebody else's routine might be to wake up and drink a cup of coffee, while somebody else's routine might be to wake up and walk out the door. And all of us live differently with our routines that we have. Now, once we understand that routines are part of our life and that habits are part of our life, we have to understand what habits successful sellers have. And then we'll get in a little bit into like how to break those habits, because that's pretty critical too, right? Rob, we have to figure out, like, when we have a bad habit, what do we have to do to actually break it? So if I get into the morning habits of a seller, most of us are going to pick up our phone. We're going to look at our Amazon seller sales from the previous day. Maybe we're going to dig in and look at some of our emails. But are those the right habits for a successful business? And the only answer to that is if we start with setting goals. And so before we can actually look at what our powerful habits or our powerful routines of the morning should be, we have to understand what our goals are, because without a goal, a plan is just a wish. And it's critical for us as Amazon sellers and as business professionals that we have an understanding of what goals we're trying to achieve, because what successful sellers do is they build their habits around the goals that they're trying to accomplish. And if I don't know what those goals are, then I can't know if I have the successful habits. So I'll go through kind of a couple of goals that we could be thinking about. You could have a sales goal, right? A particular goal for the week, for the month, for the year, a profit goal, a percentage of profit, an ad spend goal, ACOS, tacos, whatever number it is that you want to follow, number of reviews, or sales and sales rank. But what is critical about that is that those numbers are really what I'll call high level numbers of your business. And when you get into the habits of a successful seller, they're not just going to be able to tell you what their sales are in a particular month. They're going to be able to tell you what a SKU is attempting to do in a particular month. And that's what we want to get down to, is what I call SKU level goal setting. Because if I have SKU level goal setting, I can now watch my business in a more meaningful way to understand exactly what's happening in my business and how I can impact it.
Yeah, that's some great information. So everybody who's just joining in, I got Jeff Cohen from Seller Labs. We're talking about habits of every successful Amazon entrepreneur. And we'd be more than happy, like if you have a habit that you use either daily or monthly, put it down in the, post it in the comments section. We want to hear some of these that, maybe other people have, and we would love to hear what other people do. I mean, Jeff's given some great ideas here on what he does. But I noticed, Jeff, one of the words that came up was you were talking about like measuring or success. So how do you measure success, like either on a daily or monthly basis?
Yeah, so I think it starts with goal setting, and then what I call pacing. So being able to understand if I'm moving towards my goals effectively, and so if I understand that my goal for the year is $1 million, and my goal for a particular month might be 50,000 or it might be 80,000. Now you can't just take 1 million and divide it by 12, because our business isn't cyclical like that. Our business is going to have ups and downs. So I need to understand which months are supposed to be better and which months are supposed to be worse. So I want to be able to pace to my monthly numbers, and I want to be able to see kind of quickly whether I have any new reviews that have come in. I want to be able to see if I have any SKUs that are, underperforming. I want to see if I have any SKUs that are overperforming, because that's going to tell me when I need to make inventory adjustments. I want to know what's kind of happening with my products. Have my listings changed? Has anything kind of gone awry with my listings? Do I have anybody hijacking my listings? These are all different things as a seller that I want to be kind of watching on a daily basis. And so I kind of broke it down into activities that you need to be doing on a daily basis versus activities that you need to be doing on a more, maybe quarterly or monthly basis. And so, when you're talking about the daily basis, you're talking about things like monitoring your SKUs and monitoring your sales and really understanding what's happening. When you start talking about things that maybe are happening on a more like monthly basis or maybe quarterly basis, those are things like maybe watching your IPI score. Those are things that are maybe like checking your messages to make sure that they're the most effective. Those are the things that might be like checking your reimbursements to make sure you're being reimbursed properly. I don't need to watch those things on a daily basis, but they are things I need to keep my eye on. And then there's a few things that you don't even need to do monthly. Maybe they're things you need to be doing maybe once every 6 months, like looking at who has access to your account and what are the permissions for those people and what kind of tools are you using and are those tools effective? And so I think for a seller, you want to develop a cadence and a calendar for the different types of activities that you're doing and how often you need to be working on those. And I call that an audit plan, right? And so as you're developing that audit plan, you'll take something like feedback and reviews, right? Something Seller Labs has been involved in for 7-8 years now. And you need something like immediate, like message compliance, right? If your messages are no longer compliant, you need to know that immediately. And it's a much higher action item than just updating your messages. If a review comes in, you want to know that immediately. And so you can set up alerts and notifications or have people track these things for you so that you can pay attention to the things that are critically important. But don't forget to put on your audit list to review your messages maybe once a quarter or once every 6 months so that you have a better message and a better communication to your customer over time. And as you go through feedback and reviews, inventory, listings, profit, traffic, and we can go through each of those if you want, each one of those has its own little audit plan that you ultimately want to design so that you can understand when you want to tackle which parts of your business and how you ensure that your stuff is being watched and managed either by yourself or your team or possibly a software that you might be using?
Yeah, so we did actually. It's funny you mentioned SKU. So we did actually have somebody come in with a comment mentioning SKU. So the SKU level, that's a good one, and that's absolutely true. I mean, that's one thing I would look at for sure. And so here, let me get that off the screen. But yeah, so we have plenty more, but we do have to take a quick commercial break. So hang tight real quick, and we'll be back in just a couple seconds.
This content is brought to you by Accrueme, the business-friendly funding solution for Amazon sellers. If you're a profitable Amazon seller looking for capital to grow your profits, click the link around this video or visit accrueme.com for a no-risk funding estimate in less than 3 minutes.
Yeah, so welcome back to the Seller Growth Podcast. I'm Rob Stanley, Chief Marketing Officer for Accrueme, and I got Jeff Cohen from Seller Labs, and today we are talking about habits of every successful entrepreneur or Amazon entrepreneur. Probably entrepreneurs in general, I would guess. There's always some very common habits I noticed. Jeff, and I know we didn't have this one on the list, but I've read a lot of articles, about a bunch of CEOs and stuff, and one of the things they do talk about is getting up early. Like they feel like they get more done. And I know we didn't have that on our list, but could you address that? Like, is that something you do? I do. I mean, I'm up at like 5:10. I do my exercises. I check my email. I kind of get things going in the morning, but also probably because Accrueme is on the East Coast. But how about yourself?
Yeah, so I'll say that the CEO of my house wakes up early, but but I do not. I am not an early riser, but I've read those same articles, right? And my wife is up at 5:30. She has to work out. She has to work out, get the lunches made, have everything ready to go so that she can sit down at 8 o'clock and start working, or she doesn't feel like her day was right. And that's, again, it's part of the cue and the routine and the reward of that action that you build over time is the one that you're trying to achieve, right? And at the beginning, you're like, oh, I'm trying to do this to be healthy. But in the end, you're doing it because that's just how your body knows how to operate. And so somebody's operate and needing that time, and people will talk about needing that 10 minutes of meditation or such. But here's what I'll say. I think that some people do wake up early and they go through that routine, but they actually develop bad habits in doing so. And so like one of the bad habits I think that a lot of people have, and I'll get into the comment a little bit about SKU level. One of the bad habits that a lot of people have is that they let their email dictate their day. And what I call it is outputs versus outcomes. And we started off by talking about goals and goal setting, because if I truly know what my goals are, I should be able to break my goals down into a quarter, into a month, into a week, into a day. And I should know what I need to do today to move the needle in my business. So at Seller Labs, when we talk as a leadership team about a new feature we want to add or a new marketing promotion we want to do, or how to help sellers, the first thing we say to ourselves is, how does it move the needle in us meeting our goals? Now, all of our goals are not profit driven, right? We have goals around building community, and we have goals around the success of Amazon sellers. So all of our goals are not necessarily profit driven, but we do try to ensure that every action that we take is specifically driven back to the goals that we've established. And if you have those goals and you understand them, then it's very easy when you start your day and you start looking at your email to understand whether you're starting to get distracted or you're actually making an investment in your business. So let's say something new, like, I don't know, Clubhouse comes out, right? And all of a sudden it's a massive time suck. You as an Amazon seller have to understand, or have to ask yourself, what am I trying to get from something like Clubhouse? Is it worth my time if I'm there? Maybe you need to invest a little bit of time to understand that. But at some point in time, you actually need to look at the outcome from your outputs. And what happens is, as humans, we start to get excited about the outputs that we generate. We can see how many emails we got through in a day. We can see how many suppliers we talked to. We can see how many products we did research on. But if my goal was to get one new product this week, it doesn't matter how many products I researched if I don't actually accomplish the goal of getting the product that I want to sell. And so that takes us back to the comment of SKU level, because the easiest way I thought of it is that it's easy for us to look at our catalog as a whole. It's difficult for us to look at a piece of our catalog. And when you look at a piece of your catalog, especially in a camera, it makes the background fuzzy, right? But when you look at everything as a whole, then everything looks like it's in focus. But your business might not actually be in focus when you actually dive into one. I've never done this before, but it actually illustrates the point very well.
Yep.
And so that's why I talk about SKU level profitability. It's why we built a SKU level view within our tool, because as a seller, you have to be able to look at your catalog as a whole and have red light, green light indicators to know how your business is doing, and be able to look at past 7 days, past 30 days, and see those are all habits that successful sellers have. But when there's a problem, you need to be able to dive into the SKU and figure out what the actual problem is. More importantly, you have to know whether the SKU you're diving into is even worth your time. And that's the kicker. Because so many sellers get hung up, bad habit, they get hung up on trying to fix every problem on every SKU. But we don't need to fix every problem on every SKU. I need to ensure that the SKUs that are making me money are the ones that are running the most efficiently and most effectively. And so the way to do that is to use what's called the Pareto principle. And the Pareto principle is the 80-20 rule. It states that 80% of our output will come from 20% of our effort. So that means that 80% of your effort in the day will only generate 20% of your output in the day. Think about that. This
That's
math
true.
exists. It exists within life, not just our Amazon catalog. This isn't an Amazon theory that I'm trying to sell you. This is a theory of life, right? 80% of the cars in your city will travel on 20% of the roads, right? Think about it from a traffic flow perspective. 20% of the roads will have 80% of the traffic. So where do we want to spend our time? And that's where SKU level really becomes critical, because not only do I have to have that catalog, I have to have that SKU view, because I have to know what my goals are for every SKU. Because when I start diving into the SKU level and I go from the macro to the micro, I have to understand whether something's at the head of my catalog, meaning it's the top 20% that's generating 80% of my sales. Those are the ones that if I run out of stock, man, I'm in trouble. If I get suspended, I'm in trouble. If I have a hijacker, I'm in trouble, right? Those are the ones that I need to be like on super high alert when I get a notification. If it's one of my 20% SKUs, man, I need to stop what I'm doing and go fix it. If it's one of my 80% SKUs, I need to go, okay, that's important, but it may not be as important as what I'm currently working on, and ensure that I don't get distracted by something that won't truly move the needle in my business. And Apple, God bless their soul, has perfected the art of distraction.
Yes,
right?
they did.
And so we as a society have become so distracted by what we do, and we end up spending time on things that don't drive us to that. So the second part of my catalog is, I'll call the middle of my catalog. It's going to be the 70% of my catalog that could be, maybe, I like to say it's SKUs that are working their way to the head and SKUs that are working their way to the tail. And I need to kind of understand the 70% of the SKUs, the 70% of this catalog, and understand whether I'm attempting to push that SKU up, I want to spend more time on it, or it's on its way down and I want to stop working on it. And it could be that the SKU's at the end of its life cycle, and therefore it's heading down, and I need to plan for its retirement and slow the sales and slow the ad and improve the profit. It could be that a new competitor came on and I need to just change. It could be that the whole inventory supply chain got disrupted, i.e. the local Suez Canal. And now the cost of shipping of that product or the time it's going to take for that product to come back into stock. If I take what's happening in the shipping arena and I apply it to the head, torso, and tail concept, products on my head, I want to figure out how to get them into an air shipment to get to me, because I need them. Even if it's going to cost me more, I need them. I might cut my profit because I don't want to cut my sales velocity in the short term. Items in my middle, well, maybe I'll still stick them on a boat. They're more expensive to put on a boat today than they were to put on a boat a year ago, but I'll still put them on a boat. Items that are at the end of my catalog, as Amazon would call it, my crap, I can't realize a profit. I don't even want them on my boat. Shipping prices have changed. The economics have changed. The market's changed. Why am I worrying about it? When we talk about habits of a good sellers focus on SKUs that win. Bad sellers focus on all of their SKUs. Good sellers use data to drive their decisions. Bad sellers either get into what's called analysis paralysis. They just stare at data and they can't make a decision, or they become so emotionally connected to a particular SKU that they're actually willing to go down with the ship, so to speak. Since I was using a shipping analogy, just stick with it, right? They're willing to go down with the ship because they want to wish that SKU to success, as opposed to truly understanding what does or does not drive success.
Yeah. Wow. And this is why I wanted Jeff on. That's some very deep knowledge, but that's also, you know what that is? That's experience. Jeff is sharing experience. And I can relate because I've been in e-commerce 20 plus years. So it was easy to relate to what you're saying. And I'll give a real life example. Yeah, you were talking about the 80-20. 80% of my sales were coming from 20% of my products. So as I made it very clear to everybody, I used to sell, iPhone parts for many years, a lot of other stuff prior to that in the electronic industry. But I started branching out, right? Samsung came out, Motorola had a phone, right? So I would branch out to these areas selling parts. But you know what? Occasionally a part would come through and it would sell well. But a lot of the times I just was buying parts to see. And then it was like, that's not doing well, get rid of it. And then focus on the ones that did. And once I did that, and to kind of convert this into like an Amazon, let's say you have a SKU that's doing well. Have you looked at refreshing it? Is there a version 2.0 of it? Can you add a feature to it to refresh it and get it selling again? Even though it's selling good, maybe it'll sell even better.
Right.
That's what Jeff's talking about, is that type of, understanding. And anybody who's new to selling, these are like crucial things. We got some questions coming in, Jeff. So let me get to a couple of questions here. Go ahead.
Before you throw the questions up, what I call selling is a ladder. And there's activity that you do at the beginning and you're at the bottom and you're pretty safe, because if you fall one step. And as you go up the ladder, as your sales grow, you have to make different investment decision choices. In the same regard, because we've also both worked in software companies, right? Yep. In the same regard, when you're starting a software company, that you might go to a trade show and pass out flyers, because if you pick up 5 clients, it moves the needle on your business. But after you've been in business for a year or two, 5 more clients isn't going to move the needle. So when you're starting selling, think of it like I could go door to door and sell 10 units a day. So getting those first units of sale are hard, but once you get them, it's even harder to go from 10 to 50 to 100 and really start to scale your business. So just put your energy in the right place. And that doesn't mean ignore everything else. You still need that revenue as long as it's profitable. Just don't put your time into it don't overly put your time into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep those questions coming. We got to break for a quick commercial break. Hang tight. All sellers are looking to grow their business. Why not take advantage of the Accrueme.com Grow Now and Pay Later option? Accrueme is not a bank. They truly only win when you win with growth capital funding. What are you waiting for? Head on over to Accrueme.com now. Be sure to mention the podcast. Yeah. So if you head over to crewme.com, be sure to mention the Seller Growth Podcast. I'd really appreciate that if you end up filling out our form. And today I have Jeff Cohen from Seller Labs, and we're talking about basically what makes a successful Amazon entrepreneur or just entrepreneur in general. And we had a great discussion going. We did have a couple questions come in. Let's get to those real quickly. We had a question pop up here. In your experience, what is one common area that most sellers fall short? Is there a common thread? What is one area you personally want to improve in 2021, Jeff?
Okay, so common shortfall analysis paralysis is one of the most common bad habits I see from sellers. Analysis paralysis is basically allowing the analysis of your data to paralyze you as an individual from making a decision. So at Seller Labs, we have a corporate mantra, philosophy, pillar, whatever you want to call it, that says fail fast, fail often, fail forward. And so we want our team to use the data that they have at the time to make the best decision possible. As new data comes in, reevaluate your decision, and if you need to, pivot. And I think that's a great lesson for everybody to implement into their business, which is you'll never have 100% of the data that you need to make a successful decision. So use the data that you have. And you know what, like my best data source has ever been? It's the one I work on daily.
Yeah.
My gut. So I use data to back up my gut, right? I don't always go with my gut, but I'll let my gut kind of give me a hypothesis, and then I'll have data either back that up or override it. But I let the data ultimately make the decision. That's probably the biggest mistake that I make. I'd say the second one, if we're talking about newer sellers in the space, it's the belief that taking a course will make them successful. I think that courses are a great guide of information, but courses are typically walking you through a process. And the challenge of Amazon is that everything you get into requires so many nuances to be successful. And therefore, my recommendation typically to people getting started is to have a certain amount of money to invest without any expectation of return. You should be able to launch your first product, and you should be able to at least break even. If you pick the right product, the economics should be there to at the very least break even. But the knowledge that you're going to gain the first time you do everything from creating a listing to doing a photo to building a store to building A+ content to starting your advertising to writing your emails to negotiating with your supplier, all of those things that were taught so nicely to you in the course all have a learning curve for when you actually do them. And so one of the things you can really do is put yourself into a community where you can where you can expand and kind of lean on other people to help you along the way. When you ask, what am I personally doing? I think the question was like, what's one of my own?
What is one area you personally want to improve on in 2021?
Yeah. So I think for me, one of mine has been to actually identify my habits and then determine whether I like them or not. So I don't have a particular habit that I'm trying to break, but I am trying to personally understand where and when I have habits. And it's been really interesting as I started this by reading a book, and then I built it, I kind of built it into learning from these other Amazon sellers, but I've been kind of digging into it more and more. And it's really interesting, the weird habits that I have, from maybe the type of ice cream that I eat when I go to a particular store, to the type of food that I eat at a particular restaurant, to the type of gifts that I buy, whether it be for my wife, or to the type of seats that I pick when I travel. And so some of these I find are good. Like, I like my seat that I pick when I travel, and I always try to pick the exact same seat. And some of them are bad. And I need to, break it. And it's really hard when you love this food at one particular place, but that food really isn't good for you. And you decide you need to break that habit. And I think I'm trying to work personally on my ability to have more healthy habits in my life. And so it's not one particular habit that I'm seeking to improve on. It's more of the general concept of making sure the routine of my habits, which is kind of second level, I guess. The routine of my habits are just in general a healthier routine.
Yeah. And it was funny you mentioned use data, because about 7 minutes ago, before you actually got into it, somebody made a comment about using data. So it was, I unfortunately didn't get it on the screen before you segued into it, but it's absolutely true. I mean, using data is great. I mean, when I was running my company, I would always look at the data, but do you feel like sometimes, and I know you mentioned this a little bit, like sometimes you go too micro, like you start looking at daily numbers and, and then like maybe you look into hourly numbers, then you're looking at what days of the week. And sometimes I felt like that was not good to do. Like
Right.
it was, how did I do for the month? And then it was like, okay, how did I do for 3 months? How did I do for 6? Have you ever gotten into that, Jeff, or seen that happen where they just dive too deep?
Well, I mean, we do marketing, so we do dive too deep when we're getting into like ads, and you can start getting into like how you want to bid on a Tuesday versus how you want to bid on a Thursday in the
True.
afternoon versus the morning, right? So there are times that behavior is a good behavior, and there's times that behavior is a bad behavior. And I think that the way I like to break it down into like three simple steps, right? There's a cue, a notification, an alert. There's something telling you that something's wrong, right? Then you need to go seek information. And that's when you need to decide how little or how deep you need to go to get enough information to then take an action. And so I think that you can go way too deep, but like, what problem are you trying to solve? And does going that deep really solve that problem? So I know healthy habits of successful sellers. A lot of sellers like to log in the morning. They like to see their sales from the past day. They want to track their sales 7 days over 7 days, 30 days over 30 days. They want to see their movers and shakers. They want to know if there's any super high level things they need to worry about. If that all checks out, you then have your plan for the day that you had already set. If something within that seems off, right? You got a bad review. Somebody's hijacking your listing. You have a listing suspended. Each one of those has to have a different priority of what you're going to do with it and whether it's going to distract you from what you already had planned. So, great example. I had planned to come onto this podcast today, right? It's part of one of my goals, which is to be in the public space and to be on 12 podcasts in the year. So I try to do about once a month. Something would have happened. If something had happened significantly to my business, I would have had to reschedule this. But because this is a priority in my day and a priority in my month and in my 12-month goal, the value of this has to be higher than the fire that may be caused by something else. And so I didn't let anything else distract me. Now, I didn't have any fires this morning, so I didn't really have to worry about it. But I'm trying to give you kind of the theoretical of like how you need to be planning your day. And that's where I kind of start with this idea of if you're not great at this, just start by realizing what you're doing. Be more purposeful with your action. Now, it's interesting because, we run a conference. It's called the Resonate Conference. You can go to sellerlabs.com/resonate and see all the past videos. We have like 3 or 4 years worth of videos. We always deliver a lot of high level mindset thinking. And that's what this podcast is. It's a mindset concept. And it's amazing how many Amazon sellers rank it low. So, Jeff, why are you taking a concept that Amazon sellers rank low and putting it on my podcast? That's a great question, Rob. It's because the ones that do watch it and value it high are the ones who are successful. Because it's easy in your day to get distracted with your day-to-day activities. It's hard in your day to put time aside for yourself to grow as a human or to grow as a business owner. And ultimately, that's what you have to do. Now, you have to ask yourself a question. You have to ask yourself a question like, is that what you're trying to do? And that's why it all goes back to goals. Because you might be listening to this and say, well, my goal is to generate $50,000 a month at a 20% profit because I want to generate an extra, 10 grand a month in revenue for myself. Awesome. The next person might listen to that and go, why, man, you're thinking way too small. I want to build a $5 million business. But we all have different goals that we're trying to accomplish. We all have different things we're trying to do. We're trying to generate our income for different reasons. We're trying to live for a different why. Right. And I'm lucky. I work for passion. I consider myself extremely lucky. I told my kids during the pandemic, I go, you guys are super lucky. Your mom's in medicine and your dad is in e-commerce. I mean, boy, did you hit the gold for having parents working through a pandemic.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm lucky in being able to do that. And you and I talked about this in the green room before we started. Like, we love waking up and doing this, and it's a passion for us. And it's like, we almost kind of consider it a privilege that we get to hang out with each other and talk.
Yep.
And that we get to learn from each other and that we get to teach others. And I think like those are the things, like, I know I'm getting deep.
That's good
like,
stuff.
That's the thing that sets people apart is the successful sellers know what they're trying to do, and they have that locked in, and they're not just playing around. They're not just like, oh, we're just going to do this and see what happens. Absolutely. They've got very defined goals. And one thing I'll challenge you guys to do, okay? One thing I'll challenge everybody that's listening to do is stop thinking about yourself as the business that you are today and start thinking about yourself in terms of the business you want to be. Mm-hmm. So if your business today is 50,000 and you're trying to grow to 100, if your business today is $1 million and you're trying to grow to 5 million, start thinking about yourself as a $5 million business that's underperforming versus thinking about yourself as $1 million business that's trying to 5X. You change all of your optics in how you look at your business. I'll give you a really simple one. You stop calling advertising an expense and you start calling advertising an investment. Mm-hmm. When we talk to people in our advertising, they call us, our software will do it for you, or people will call us to run their ads for them. When they call us and go, how much do you cost? We immediately go, we're not the right fit for you. Oh, why are you not the right fit for me? Because if you're looking at us as a cost, you're not entering this correctly. You have to look at us as an expense that has a return on investment. And when you break that down to services that you hire, software that you employ, or time that you spend during the day, everything you do should be returning on the investment that you've created.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why AccrueMe is teamed up with sellerlabs, is that, you should be looking at their tools as a way to make more money. Not what's it going to cost me monthly? How am I going to make more money by using these tools? And it goes the same thing with AccrueMe. When you come to us and you're looking for funding, you're looking at how can I use AccrueMe's money for me to make more money? And that's why it was such a perfect fit. And that's why I want Jeff on here. And to be honest, I mean, I could literally have just hit go live and give Jeff the microphone and he could have just took over because he makes it so easy for me. But we do have to stop for a quick commercial break and pay a few bills here. So real quick.
This content is brought to you by AccrueMe, the business-friendly funding solution for Amazon sellers. If you're a profitable Amazon seller looking for capital to grow your profits, click the link around this video or visit accrueme.com for a no-risk funding estimate in less than 3 minutes.
All right, I'm back with the big Jeff. So those who are listening in, Jeff's got a giant picture of his face up on there. And be sure to hit that like and subscribe. And I got Jeff Cohen from sellerlabs, and it's awesome having him on. Him and I, every time we get on together, we can just talk for hours. And we are getting close to needing to wrap this up a little bit. So Jeff, I know that, I mean, I've had you on a few times, but I've never got to ask this. So Jeff's wearing a shirt that says famous on Amazon. I don't think I've ever asked you, like, how'd you come up with that? Give me a brief little story. I'm sure there's a long story to it, but give me a brief little story how you came up with that famous on Amazon on your shirt there.
Do you remember the, I think it was the movie Big Trouble, Little China?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he says, or maybe it was Big, one of those movies. He says, I'm big in Japan.
I think so.
I'm big in China, or maybe he says like, I'm big in China. Like it's the whole concept that like, well, you might not know me, but I'm big somewhere else.
Yes.
So, I kind of played off of that and I was like, well, you might not know who I am, but I'm famous on Amazon. And the idea was that you can be famous on Amazon too. And it's an awesome platform because it's a brand, it's a brand platform, but it's also a brandless platform. Right. And so, any brand that you've never heard of, Death Wish Coffee was famous on Amazon before anybody really knew who Death Wish Coffee was. Anchor was famous on Amazon before anybody knew who Anchor was, and before Anchor IPO'd for $300 billion or whatever they did. I think it was actually 300 million. But famous on Amazon is all about getting your 5 stars, right? It's about building a great product, a great brand, and building a great community around your product and your brand. Because one thing you have to remember with a brand is an emotional connection. And so when somebody mentions your brand, what's the emotional connection they have to your brand? And that's, in my mind, when you win, right? I always say, like, what's a win? The win is when your brand starts getting searched in the search box. That's when you win. And if you follow Amazon, we follow it very deeply, but if you follow Amazon, there's a lot of brands that get a lot of brand search on Amazon that are brands you've never heard of before. And they're famous on Amazon. They've been able to do it. They've been able to build a brand and build a community and generate external traffic to come into their business. And ultimately, like, that's what we should all be seeking to do to be successful on the platform. Now, I'm also a marketer, very similar to yourself. And when sellerlabs started back in 2012, we were attending our first show, and we actually, it was a conference called SCO, SCOE. And SCO was kind of the industry show. It's been replaced by Prosper over the last few years. And we showed up at our first conference wearing lab coats. And so people that have known us in the space for 7 years all knew us as the lab coat company. Because when you think about it, right, when you walk into a trade show hall, 400 or 500 people that are there, how does one person there stick out from everybody else? And as a brand, if you don't make yourself memorable, you don't stick out. And so this was the shirt that I made. I have a few dozen of them just so people know I don't wear them the same shirt every day. I can go to a trade show and wear one every day without a problem. And I guess in a weird way, I've kind of become known for it. I was at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and somebody like came up to my wife and was like, "Is that Jeff Cohen?" And she's like, "Yeah, don't give him a big head." And she had seen my videos we're a community of a lot of people who are online. And so it's really cool when that physical connection happens. You really want to have some fun, wear this shirt around Seattle. You get a lot of funny looks. I never actually realized it. One day I was in Seattle wearing this shirt and I didn't even really pick up on it. And I had so many people stop me and ask me questions.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is funny. Like, I mean, I guess I would have one that says my hands are famous on YouTube, because all the videos I did were take aparts, like how to take apart your iPhone, take apart your iPad. So everybody knew my hands or my voice, right? But they never knew who I was.
Right.
So it was always funny when I was in the iPhone industry, when I'd go to a place and meet people, they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw your YouTube video." And I mean, 48 million views. I'm sure a few people have seen my hands. And then I don't know if Jeff remembers, but my first sort of public appearance as far as marketing and far as the Amazon world was actually at Prosper. And I showed up as the wizard. I was working at Feedback Wiz at the time. And I was the wizard. I was the feedback wizard. And that was my first introduction to everybody. And of course, I think even Jeff, the second time at IRCE, a lot of people still didn't know who I was.
Right.
because I always had the wizard outfit on. So it was pretty funny. But
it
anyways,
happens. And like, I would have played off. I mean, you and I are both marketers. I would have played off
Yep.
of the hands, and I would have been, I would have done something funny with like a shirt that goes, "You don't know me, but you know my hands," and then like a picture of my hands on a shirt or something like that. That would make people realize who I am, because that is, you know, it's interesting. I was listening to a thing. We weren't supposed to talk about branding, but I was listening to a show on branding, and my kid was in the car and he was asking me like, what's a brand? And I was going through the whole idea of emotional appeal. And I go, you know, like Coca-Cola. And my son looks at me dead. He's 13, looks me dead in the eye. He goes, what's Coca-Cola?
what?
I was like, what? I didn't even know what to say. I'm like, well, what kind of soda? I go, what kind of soda do you drink? He's like, you know, Coke, Sprite. And
Didn't connect.
I'm like, well, Coca-Cola. And he's like, you mean like Coke, Sprite, Pepsi? And I'm like, Coca-Cola. I'm just keep repeating Coca-Cola. And he's never connecting that Coke and Coca-Cola are the same thing. Now it makes a lot of sense. He's 13 years old. He watches the NBA. He plays on the Xbox. They're all promoting Sprite and other drinks. This isn't the world we lived in, where at 8 a.m. on Saturdays, all of us are watching cartoons with bears, you know, with polar bears and singing about the world of Coke. So it's a new world, and they see brands in a different way than we saw brands, and brands that my kids are emotionally connected to, brands that I've never heard of because they're YouTube or TikTok people or something like that. And so, nothing makes you feel more old than when that starts to happen, right?
That is 100% true. My kids talk about influencers. I have no clue who they are.
Right.
Well, anyways, listen, everybody, we could probably go on, but we're going to have to wrap this up. So once again, I have Jeff Cohen on from Seller Labs, and we were talking about habits of every successful Amazon entrepreneur or entrepreneurs in general. And so just real quickly, if you want to get a hold of Jeff, we got it real easy way. Just go over to crewme.com, take a look at the podcast area. We have the video on there. You can rewatch. Jeff's contact information or Seller Labs contact information is in there. And Jeff and I probably could go on for another hour, but we'd probably just be talking about stuff we want to talk about, and everybody else probably wouldn't be 100% interested. But Jeff, thank you so much for being on the Seller Growth Podcast.
I always like to challenge people at the end of these to see who stuck around. So go ahead and post your favorite habit or your worst or your best habit. Go either way. The habit you feel like you need to break, or the habit that you love. You know, maybe say like around your Amazon business, so other people can learn from that. And you know, Rob, you pick the best one, and I'll ship them some Seller Labs swag, or, you know, Rob, maybe I think we've got some coffee tumblers or something like that I can send.
Wow.
If you guys want to add something, I'm not challenging you, but you can add to it as well. And, you know, we'll send something to you, but I like challenging people that stick to the end to participate and kind of show us the love, or reach out on LinkedIn and share with me directly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So be sure to do that. And I'll tell you what, if you have any questions for Jeff, be sure to put it in the comment section. Even if this video is older, I will make sure to contact him and get the answer for it and get it posted, or get you in touch with him one way or another. So we could definitely do that. And Jeff, hopefully I will see you possibly at Prosper coming up in July. I will be there myself, and I'm sure if Jeff is there, he's very approachable, easy to talk to, myself too. And you'll probably see us even hanging out and talking to each other. Feel free to come over and hang out with us.
I'm easy to find.
It's easy to find. There, I won't be the wizard this time, but I'll be easy to find. So Thanks everybody for tuning in. I do appreciate it. We're live every Tuesdays and Thursdays with the Seller Growth Podcast. Always trying to bring you some of the best content. On behalf of myself, Seller Growth Podcast, and AccrueMe, we like to thank Jeff Cohen for being on, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks.